The story of the Radium Girls began in 1898, when the Industrial Revolution was in full swing. 4.5 million Americans worked in factory jobs for manufacturing companies. Cities were growing bigger and denser, while the American economy became increasingly dependent on manufactured products. 1898 was the year in which Marie Curie discovered radium, an element whose true properties would not be known for decades to come. Then came the Roaring Twenties, and the economy found it could profit easily from this novel substance and its mystery. Radium was said to have unthinkable beauty and health benefits. It was the potion of life and the ultimate cure-all. They called it Undark. Americans were told to drink their morning Radithor and to bathe in it at night. All of the finest Parisian silks, lingerie, cigarettes, condoms, toothpaste, soap, playing cards, chocolate, and coffee, even butter, anything worth buying contained radium. The wealthiest clad themselves in expensive radioactive light. Radium was the essence of 1920s consumer culture and the most expensive and coveted substance in the country. In 1917, the United States had joined World War I, and millions of troops were sent overseas. The trenches were dark, and days passed slowly without any concept of time. The United States Radium Corporation sent out advertisements claiming that every soldier needed a radium dial watch. They said that any family who cared for their brother or son in the army would send him a glowing timepiece. Even after the war ended, radium dials continued to sell. And to keep up with sales, U.S. Radium filled its dial painting factories with young immigrant girls. Pay was relatively high at 1.5 pennies per dial, and hundreds of girls lined up to work for the corporations. To ensure that the tips of their paintbrushes were fine, managers told the girls to lip, dip, paint. Lick their brush, dip it in radium, and paint the dial. The fumes in the factory were so thick with radioactive particles that the girls would file out at night glowing. Their hair, their faces, even the underwear and skin beneath their uniforms glowed. They were known as the Ghost Girls. Soon, strange things began to happen to them. Over several years, they developed bone fractures, anemia, suppression of menstruation, and radium jaw, a condition in which the cells in one's neck and jaw die. In several cases, the girls' jaws fell off of their skulls entirely. By 1927, over 30 of the Radium Girls were dead. The question is, to what extent did the Radium Girls impact American workers' rights? The answer is that they impacted workers' rights to a great extent, through the media attention they gathered, legal precedents they set, and health science that was discovered because of them. First, the media. Once the plight of the Radium Girls was publicized, journalists realized quickly that their story was a profitable one. One 1928 newspaper article was boldly headlined, "Settlement of a Pathetic Case," and drew on pity for the women's frightful injuries to garner recognition for their fights against U.S. radium. Eye-catching articles like these were generated by journalists in need of public interest. They focused on the sex of the Radium Girls and shocking, even disturbing details about their ailments. But regardless of the writers' motives, the emotionally provoking words they used successfully got the attention of the public. Another article from the same year asked its readers what they would do if they, like the Radium Girls, were dying without escape. The audience of this newspaper, the Sunday Star, spans socioeconomic classes. It was produced in Washington, D.C., and would have reached the doorsteps of wealthy homeowners and politicians, as well as the middle and lower class. Asking this direct question forced average Sunday morning readers to imagine themselves in the position of the Radium Girls. Publication of their story helped draw attention to the existence and humanity of the working class. Next is litigation. 5 of the Radium Girls, once aware of the effects of their factory jobs, went to court to sue U.S. Radium. Their case exposed injustice within the legal system. Dr. Alice Hamilton was a scientist who originally worked for U.S. Radium, but later testified against them in court. This is a transcript of her letter to a Radium Girls case investigator. It openly questions the integrity of the New Jersey Department of Labor and suggests the falsification of a published report. The NJDL report falsely stated, against evidence from the plaintiffs, that no health issues had been observed from any of their dial pagers. Unfortunately, women like Dr. Alice Hamilton were seldom believed in the 1920s. U.S. Radium spread word that any girl who came forward had syphilis, not radium poisoning, in order to smear their reputations. These lies, often supported by medical professionals, acted as sabotage to lessen societal support for the Radium Girls' case. And throughout this decades-long case, big corporations like Radium Dial and U.S. Radium used their money and influence to dismiss evidence of suffering. Because of U.S. Radium's power, the court had a manipulated point of view and motive. They were much more likely to act in favor of the company. And even though the case was not quickly or easily won, thanks to the Radium Girls' legal initiative, safety guidelines were issued when the radium industry exploded for a second time during World War II. The Radium Girls' litigation forever changed how the United States legal system treats workers' rights cases. And finally, health science. As Radium Girl after Radium Girl continued to die, physicians and chemists were forced to develop new ways of testing for radioactivity. The June 1929 Monthly Labor Review from the USDOL describes in great detail the radium detection method of chemical scientist. I'll put his name on the screen. The case described in this report found that the very air the Radium Girls exhaled contained radioactive substances. Dr. V.S. himself was the inventor of radium paint, and also the one who had to prove its toxicity. Processes like his would go on to protect future workers who interacted with radium. Newly discovered properties of radium would be incorporated immediately into health provisions and taught at professional levels. Had the urgency of the Radium Girls' case not pushed it along, this progress would have been made much more slowly. It was because of their sacrifice that radium went from a fun luxury to a dangerous and studied element. And without them, who knows how many more people would have died.